And we say things like, well, he's fading away. And as a matter of fact, we also say, you know, well, there's Richard Taylor, and I haven't talked for a year. And someone else will say, oh no, that's not Richard. That's just a shell of himself. And we actually call people we love shells, like we're turtles. And we've died, and you're just waiting for the winds to blow away what's left of the insides of a turtle. Well, I never will be a turtle. I'll always be a human being. And the message I try to bring to caregivers is that the person that you love is still lovable, but he has a disability. And we don't unlove people because of disabilities. In fact, we love them more. Mothers come to sons who are in these racks where they constantly turn the person, they've been in an automobile accident. They come every day and they read to them and they talk to them. People go to abnormally big expenses and efforts to stay with people who are in a coma, for instance. But because we're babbling, nobody likes to be around us. And everybody assumes that we've lost our humanity. That's just not my husband anymore. Well, why? Well, he's not the way he was. Well, was he ever the way he was? I mean, did you ever wish that he was 19 years old again? No, thank God. I don't want to go through that again. Did you ever wish that he was 40? Oh, that was the year he lost his job. No, I don't want to do that again. We accept change in each other, but we don't accept a change when it comes to a cognitive disability. If I was in a wheelchair, people wouldn't say, I don't know how you can love him. He's only got one leg. Well, we're not in wheelchairs. We're standing up, walking around. And because we do that, people think that we should be judged by a different standard, a higher standard. And it's just unfair to do that. It's unfair to you as a caregiver to do that. You are suffering the fact that this person that you've known and loved is changing in ways that you don't like. Well, I bet you he or she has done that a number of times over the course of your relationship. And you just learn to love the lovable SOB with whatever his shortcomings were. Well, I realize we don't sometimes act lovable, but we still are. And when you start focusing on the loss is when you start suffering the loss. So we've got to look back to today again, because today is really all we have. It's all we ever had, is one day at a time. And the fact that you've been married for 50 years or 5 years or 5 minutes, you still have just one day at a time. And that day is today. So what am I going to do today to find some purpose in my life? Because what happens to people with dementia is they lose their sense of purpose. When you can't drive, when you can't get out of the house, sometimes we're locked in, when people don't talk to you, what's left to do but watch reruns of Oprah? You know, you can't use the stove. What are you going to do? I say to people, when I live in a dementia unit, when I'm out speaking, I say to them at breakfast, why did you open up your eyes today? What is it that drove you to get out of bed and put your clothes on? What are you going to do today that makes it worth all that effort? Why didn't you just lay in bed all day? They'd bring you your food, they'd clean you, pull this rope and they come wipe your butt. And most people don't have an answer. They've lost their sense of purpose. Now, this happens to most people who retire, let alone have dementia. They've lost their sense. They can't wait for the retirement years, and then what they do is make up another job that no one will pay them for. And they do that intensely. That becomes their purpose. But what do we do with people who have dementia? Well, there's a common assumption that they've all acquired a love of bingo. And why not? You know, I know you're having trouble with numbers. I know you can't concentrate. I know you want to talk to other people. So let's play a game with numbers where you have to concentrate and you can't talk to other people. Yeah, but I like to play bingo, you know, says the caregiver. I go back to when I've lost my loved one, I go back to where he was, and I play bingo with the people. And I sat in those bingo games with my mother-in-law in a sniff unit when she broke her butt bone, what's that called? Pelvis, yeah. And she couldn't get out of bed. And she loves people, but she couldn't get out of bed. So if I didn't go over there, she would call people who were walking by her door. She'd just say, "Hey, you, come on in here. Who are you? You have children? You know, where do you live? What do you do?" Well, finally she was able to go to bingo, so I went with her to bingo. And the lady who was running bingo was a caregiver who was giving back to the organization. She was sincere in this, and she was giving back by calling numbers and playing bingo. And she would say, B3, shh, to my mother-in-law, because she was talking to the person next to him. I-17, shh. And what would happen is, most of the people who were playing fell asleep because they didn't come here to play bingo. It's just what other people wanted them to do every day at 10 o'clock. And pretty soon so many people would be asleep that nobody would win bingo because there wasn't enough people covering their cards. So she had this big dauber, a magic marker, and as she'd call the number, she'd walk around and she'd daub it for you. Until finally, somebody would have a bingo and she'd say, "David's got a bingo!" And David would wake up, and he knew he wasn't playing bingo. He was embarrassed that he was caught sleeping playing it. So we'd give him a present, a paper plate with some aluminum foil on it, and we'd say it was a lovely mirror that he should take and hang in his room. And David would look at it and just give it to the person sitting next to him. And they'd look at it and just drop it on the ground. Now that's what passes for activities for people with dementia sometimes. We don't take the time to know the person as a whole person because we don't believe they're a whole person. We don't believe what they tell us because sometimes we tell them things that are true for us at this moment but not true for us in another moment. So when we're pushed, we just make a guess. Well, what would I do if I were you? Well, you could pretend what it's like to have a broken leg. You could walk around on crutches. You could pretend what it's like to not have an arm. You could tie that behind your back, to be blind, to put things on. And I know with dementia, there's people who make a living helping other people pretend like they got dementia, so they know what it's like. So put Vaseline on your glasses and marbles in your underpants and wear shoes that are too small for you. I don't know all the things that they do. But I don't think you can really appreciate what it's like to have dementia. Because dementia is a function of our brains, and each of us has a different brain. We all have the same organic structure, but it's developed differently. We have different deep-seated values that translate what's going on out there that are different from each other. And we honor that in each other. It's the only way we can stay married, is if we honor differences in each other. But when it comes to dementia, every difference becomes a paper cut on our hands, because it's a new difference. And we end up with hands full of paper cuts, and that hurts. It hurts all the time, even when I'm not holding paper anymore. I appreciate that, but I'd ask you to appreciate the fact that you're making those paper cuts yourself.